Hello again. Something which I find slightly puzzling is that with all the reporting about the fighting in Ukraine, not that many people seem anxious to explore the roots of the conflict, which lay in the establishment of collective farms in Ukraine in the 1920s and 30s, when it was part of the Soviet Union. In the late 1920s, after he had control of the entire Soviet Union, Stalin was determined to industrialise the nation, which was pretty backwards and based more upon agriculture than it was industry. To this end, he decided that all the small farms in the Ukraine, which at that time was known as the breadbasket of Europe because it produced so much wheat, should be joined together in large collective farms. In other words, people would no longer own individual fields or farms or individual animals. It would all be owned collectively by everybody, and the machinery to farm the thing to make it more efficient would also be owned collectively. With the right machinery, fewer people would be needed on the farms, and this would free up men and women to work in factories instead. The grain produced in Ukraine would need to be used to feed the cities and also to be sold to other countries to obtain desperately needed foreign currency. The peasants in Ukraine, the so-called kulaks, the wealthier peasants, didn't take to this because they prized their freedom and independence and wanted to hang on to their own fields. Because of this, they started slaughtering their animals and then stockpiling and hiding the grain that they produced, refusing to cooperate with the government. I will mention now that I spent a year and a half on a collective farm, although not in the Soviet Union, and that this method of agriculture can work well enough, provided always that it is chosen by those doing it and not forced at the point of a gun. Stalin cracked down hard on the farmers in Ukraine, executing people for hiding their grain and deporting others to different parts of Russia. The grain was seized and taken to feed the cities because he regarded the urban proletariat working in factories as more important for the nation's economic health than small farmers. This led to a shocking famine in Ukraine in 1932 and 1933. Millions of people died, probably 4 or 5 million, perhaps even more. This became known by the Ukrainian term the Holodomor, which means roughly death by starvation. This kind of thing, a famine which had been artificially constructed in a land where there was abundant wheat and everybody had enough to eat, is very hard to forget. The thumbnail to this video shows a street scene from Kharkiv, a city which we've seen in the news lately. It shows a corpse of somebody who has just died of starvation and passers-by just ignoring it. The streets were littered with corpses at that time, which was 1933. This gives us one reason why there is some animosity between Russians and Ukrainians today. Of course, there's another point, which is that this whole business of the Holodomor is used by anti-Semites as a way of trying to diminish the significance of the Holocaust. It is often cited when somebody wishes to show that there was nothing special about the Holocaust, and you'll often hear extreme right-wing types talking about the Holodomor. There is also the indisputable fact that there was an awful lot of collaboration between Ukrainians and the Germans during the Second World War. Ukrainians served in the SS and some were guards at death camps like Treblinka. It is to this which Putin refers when he talks about denazification. I have no view on this, but we need to know about it to understand the present crisis in Ukraine.